Welcome to Masonic Memories, where we chat with senior members of our lodge and reminisce about events, people, and their contributions to our fraternity. Pull up a chair, grab a coffee, and listen to the way things were back in the day as we meet on the plum, act on the level, and part on the square. Today we're going to chat with Leon Barsamian, who in 1975, when a loaf of bread cost 28 cents, was master of United Brethren Lodge. It's February 11th. We're here with Leon Barsamian, who joined the lodge in 1971, and 4 years later was master of the lodge. How did that come about, Leon?
Well, my brother-in-law was master at the time. And when I got my third degree in March, and it seemed like nobody else was really got involved, okay? And I remember that in that spring, they were doing a courtesy third degree in Charlton for the retirees. And they try to get people to go. And I, of course, my brother, I said, sure, I'll go. I'll do a steward. I'll do whatever I could. So I got pretty involved as soon as I got my third degree. One other thing, my teacher, my instructor, I joined the lodge, was Worshipful Al Kramer. And Al made me memorize the books. All the coding, and I don't know why I relented. I mean, I did it, and I remember I was at a lodge of instruction, and I was getting tested by Kramer, and Steve Weston was there, and he couldn't believe that I was doing it by memory, all the obligation, everything. So because I could do it, I was able to join in on some of the activities that preliminary to me getting in line. Well, the steward's jobs were open, but nobody wanted to go to junior deacon. So that's where I started my brother-in-law, Worshipful Joe Acanian, appointed me junior deacon.
Joe Acanian was my first gate.
Is that right?
Many years later, yes.
Things have changed from the gates. And that's how I got involved, okay?
What changed about the gates?
Well, it's more subdued now.
By a long shot, right?
Yes, it's like, as an old timer, I would say some of it's good and some of it is kind of regressed a little bit, because that is one of the things that brought a lot of members into the Masons to partake in the fun of it, okay? And now it's something, when we do the third degree, it's a little bit, yes, I understand, it's more serious, it's a serious obligation, but the sidelines are not like what they used to be. That's all I can say about that.
Can you tell me where you were on the night of December 7th, 1975?
I was home.
No.
My brother had just gotten engaged. We were having a little party. And I got a call from Brother George Palmer. He said, there's a fire down in the lodge. I says, let me go and see. So I says, I told my guests, my brother and his future wife. I said, I'll be right back. So I went down, and the smoke was coming out from the Reisberg's store, which was adjacent. And as soon as I got there, Steve Weston had just come down with the aprons and the collars. And the firemen were not allowing anybody else in the building. And that's where I was, okay? And it seemed like it forever before any real effort was to putting the fire on. The firemen were there, but the building was standing still. It was right there, but there was a fire curtain, what they call, of water that comes down the side of the building. which would protect it from any adjacent. And that didn't work too good. And consequently, the rest of it is history. We went down.
Can you tell me about the old building, what it was like? I have a picture of it. You've seen the picture. I have some questions, but it looked like Jobber's Outlet was on the bottom, Rexall Drug.
Yes.
Who else was on the bottom floor?
That's about all I can remember, okay? On the first floor of the building was the master's office and Christo's driving school. I really, didn't pay too much attention to it. I would go to the master's office to do pre-apps,
Yeah.
and anything else that we had to do.
Now, how would you get there? When I look at the building, there's an entrance on the side that says Masonic Hall. Then on the Main Street side, at the east side of the building, there's an entrance as well.
But that was more, okay, that entrance was most for the businesses on the second floor.
Which one? The one on the east side?
Yeah.
Okay.
The one on Newton Street, the first floor, there was a residence by Russell Browse.
Oh, I remember Russell Browse.
And he was like a caretaker for the entire place.
That was on the second floor?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was right there. Then the lodge itself was on the third floor.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then the fourth floor is where was our dining hall.
So there were 4 floors there.
Yeah.
So what was on the third floor was the hall?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think it was built a little differently. When I say a little differently, the fourth floor didn't go all the way across the hall. It was just enough for a dining hall, and that's where we'd have our collations.
Okay. So when you came in on the Newton Street side, what would is a large staircase to go up?
Yeah, there was a stair. Yeah. Yeah. But it's funny. It went right up to Russ Browse's apartment, and then there was a little left turn that you took. Okay.
Yeah.
And that would take you into that area where the business offices were.
Okay.
Like Christo's and the Masters up. And then there was a third floor, and that's where the lodge.
Okay.
It was sort of inconvenient for old timers.
I bet it was. How long did you stay at the fire? Did you stay?
Well, I stayed for a while. Of course, I had guests at the house. Yeah. So I went back, and then I got another call back from my friend and brother, George Palmer. He says, it's going down. Like he says, I can see the murals melting down into the,
Oh, that must have been sad.
Yes.
You told me you couldn't describe the murals. You don't remember what they were?
Well, in the foyer of the current lodge hall, we have some 11 by 17 pictures. I was responsible for getting those done.
You were?
Yes. They were in one of the historical books, I think. Okay, and since I was in publications at Raytheon, one of the contacts I had was Brother Wayne Eaton, and Wayne Eaton was in charge of the print shop. And lo and behold, I was able to contact him, and he could print these up. So we printed them up on different colored stock paper, and we passed them out. And we had a whole bunch of. I don't have them myself, but I remember sticking them in one of the files for the corporation files.
I have pictures of those, and we'll put pictures up in this interview showing from the east and from the west.
Yes.
You look very ornate.
Yeah, that was before I even. Those pictures were taken before I was in the lodge. In fact, it was done quite a bit before,
Okay. So you were master in that old building and held third degrees in that building?
Yes. Well, until December. And then the fire was December 7th.
Yeah. Pearl Harbor Day.
Yeah.
Where did you meet after that?
Well, at first, of course, we were in sort of disarray, but thanks to worshipful Wendy Williams' office on Main Street, we gathered in there and we started planning. And thanks to Doric Lodge in Hudson, they let us use their lodge room for the continuation of our degree work and everything else. And in fact, the worshipful Barsamian who came after me and served in Hudson.
Wendy Williams, was he he had an insurance agency?
Yeah, downtown, yes, on Main Street. He had an office, and thank God for him, we were able to. We had a place to meet.
Yeah. And his son's a Mason now.
Yes.
Yeah.
A building committee, and a fundraising committee. I happen to be head of I would head up the fundraising committee. And what we did was we seek pledges from the members of the lodge. And various other lodges in the area donated. Some were small, some were large. When I say large, I think 5,000 was the largest amount we got to help us rebuild. Worshipful Stan Eunice spearheaded the building committee.
Okay, and he was treasurer.
Yes, of the lodge.
Before I was.
Yeah, he was treasurer when I went through.
And then you picked Wood Brothers to be the contractors?
Yes, and I know there was a little conflict because I was working at Raytheon, and anytime we did anything, or we'd go off for a bid, we would get 3 bids. And I pushed to try to get another bid in. So I was able to find another contractor, and I pushed for this contractor to give us a bid, but he wanted $1,000 to do the bid, and we relented and we gave the $1,000. But eventually, Wood won the contract, and that's who built the current lodge.
Was the other bid much different? A different looking lodge or similar?
Well, what happened was that the building committee that sort of designed the lodge. I don't know if this is good, bad, but they gave a lot of input to it. Like for example, the one of the west doors, the northwest door, where instead of it being a swinging door, they made a sliding. That would accommodate Royal Arch.
Correct.
For some of their paraphernalia. Yeah. There were things like that, but the general hall itself, that was a good sized hall that we would utilize.
When I became a member and part of the corporation, there were funds set aside that we were using the interest to pay the loan from. Do you want to talk about the loan and how that came about and how we ended up?
Well, I tell you, it goes back very fuzzy to me, okay? I remember Brother Toon was president of the savings bank. And he was pushing, since we had businesses located in our former building, he pushed for small business association to lend us the loan and give us some money. But we had to fill out some paperwork. And that's how we got some money from, because he pushed for that.
Okay. Because my remembrance is once I was on the corporation when the loan was paid off, and we still had $50,000 or something we could use for maintenance.
I think it was 30.
The furniture that's in our lodge now, where did that come from?
Well, after our lodge was built, and I don't know what transpired in Hudson, at Doric. I think they were on a lease too. They were on they were on like second or third floor also. On the corner of Main Street in Hudson. I forgot what street that was.
That'd be Pope Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were willing to give us their furniture, and they were going to use one of the nights in our lodge and conduct their services. Now, I don't know how they got usurped out of Hudson, okay, whether their lease was up or whatever, but it became more convenient for them to come to Marlboro.
you're current president of the corporation.
Yes,
And I think you were president of the corporation right after the fire.
I was.
But you weren't president all this time, all the way through, were
No,
you?
no.
Tell me about your history on the corporation.
Well, I tell you, after during the building of the, once the building was made, okay, the current president at that time was Brother Ken Burlett. Do you remember that name?
I don't. Tell me
Okay.
about him.
Ken was a hands-on type guy. I mean, he could fix probably anything. He was that type of guy, you know, do-it-yourself person, yeah. But he moved away. And when he moved away, nobody wanted to be president, okay? That I know of, okay? And I, by osmosis, I became president, okay? I remember they wanted me to become president. So I was for a few years there. That's how I got involved in the fundraising, and if you notice, I'm the one that went and signed with the Small Business Association for the loan, and so on and so forth. But once the building was built, I hung around for a couple of years, but I sort of, I should say, disappeared from masonry. I would show up at past Masters night and here and there. But I tended more for my own career goals and my family. That first couple of years, it took a lot of time out of my family life. But I did come back into the fold.
And I know you have 3 very successful sons.
Yes, I do.
Did you have a mentor in lodge? Anyone that helped you out?
My brother-in-law Joe, of course, played quite a bit into that too.
We talked about ritualists earlier, and you said there were a bunch of good ones in those days. Can you tell me about some of the ritualists?
Okay. Most of the past masters were excellent. Frank Foss, Right Worshipful Frank Foss, was excellent. Right Worshipful Fred Sleeper, he was excellent. But the one that was more dramatic, had really some good feeling, was my brother-in-law, Joe Kenyon. He was excellent. Okay? And currently, I'll tell you, there's a few good ones now, too. Worshipful Joe Delano. Right Worshipful Dick Johnson. In fact, I'm impressed with Dick because the other night on the First Degree, he still knew a bunch of the ritual from the First Degree. I'm talking about the real long lectures, the perfect ashlar and so on and so forth.
I will agree with you that Joe Arcanian and Richard Carini were the best ritualists I've heard.
Yeah, yes, Dick was good too, yes.
Is there anything else you want to tell us about your career as a Mason?
Well, the one thing you didn't ask me how I got into Masonry.
Oh, let's go.
When I was young, I have a brother who's 6 years younger than me. And he was born with club feet. And when he was so small, they had casts on his feet and a brace. And that's the way he was. I remember him when he was young. And we had a family friend who was a Mason and a Shriner. Well, you know where I'm going with this, because he sponsored, back then you had to get a sponsor from a Masonic individual or a Shriner to get into the Shrine Hospital in Springfield. And he went there, he was accepted, and they did multiple operations on him. Now I guess they don't do those kind of operations. But back then, they did a multiple operation. He always seemed to be out there. And because of the nice work they did, I said, geez, I want to be part of that organization. And when I got married, Joe Kenyon had just gone into the Masons, and I said, Joe, how do I get in? And that's how I got in. When I was junior warden, we would have ladies' night. And the one I was responsible for, we had a joint one with the Knights of Columbus. And I suggested we should have two bands, just like a battle of bands type thing. And they were flabbergasted when I brought this up. But we held it. It was pretty nice, and it was at the Elks in Hudson.
Okay. Did you play in that band?
No, that type of music I play is not.
What were the dinners like? Because I know the dinners on the Third Degrees are quite a bit different now than they were when I joined.
Well,
what
you're
were they
right.
like when you joined?
Well, usually the Eastern Star would provide the sustenance. And the only time we had a dinner was on a Third Degree. You know?
And what would typically be on the menu?
Oh, anything from meatloaf to, I don't know, some type of chicken. Some type of chicken, a meatloaf. That's about it if I can remember. But what was interesting that our collations were nothing like our collations now. First of all, we didn't have alcohol back then. No alcohol at all. And the collations were a donut and a cup of coffee, and that was it. But that, you know, or a bagel, a muffin, and a coffee.
So is it an improvement now?
Yeah, well, yes and no.
Are there any colorful characters you want to tell me about?
Oh, yes. Well, Worshipful Asa Kimball Moody.
Oh, yes.
He was a colorful character and an excellent ritualist, by the way. Like I said, back then they weren't, most of the masters were excellent. In fact, he used to work at Raytheon, and when I say colorful, if he saw you walking down the corridor, and it could be 100 people in the corridor, he would yell out, "Hey, Hiram!" You know, he was very good. Yeah.
He was one of my gates as well.
Oh yes. Now, if he was a gate, I'm sorry, he really put the muscle into you.
Now, did you go on to be a Shriner? I know you're
Yes,
in York
yeah.
Rite Masonry.
I'm in York. I was in York Rite when I was master, and I joined council too. But I didn't keep up council because I had to go to Concord, and that was kind of inconvenient. I still go to Houghton Road Arch, and I'm glad they brought it back to Marlboro. Thanks to Worshipful Drayton Hanna.
And Drayton Hanna's a pretty good ritualist.
Yes, and like I said, today there's some good ones. You know, even Jorge is very good too. He's really shined lately.
Any advice for any new masters?
Well, when you're master, and like I said, let me just back up that one of the things I sort of regret, I wish I spent more time in line. 4 years, you just about get your feet wet and then you're out. When you're in line a little bit longer, and I know Right Worshipful Dick Johnson, he made it a point to be at every station. And that to just get you more in tune and get you really lined up to be a master. Unfortunately, again, the fire really fouled everything up. You know, it went from running along smoothly to now what do? We got to get going. We got to get a building, so on and so forth. And consequently, it took up a lot of our time raising the money. The pledges and going to different lodges and saying, "Hey, can you spare a dime?"
Well, I think the lodge was lucky to have you as master when the lodge burnt.
Oh, thank you. All I can say about the new masters, I says the lodge is taking a different turn. Yes, the one thing I wanted to talk about is that when I joined, I was sort of drilled in my head, I shouldn't say drilled, but it was very common knowledge that Masonry wasn't a charitable organization.
It was or wasn't?
It wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't designed to be charitable to the rest of the world, but for your own brethren. And now we've sort of taken that, and I'm not saying it's bad. We've evolved into really provide, like the car show we have. It provides a lot of monies to some worthwhile charities, and the Angel Fund. So these are all things. It's heading in the right direction.
Okay.
Anything else?
Could be a wrap?
Wrap.
I hope you enjoyed this discussion. There will be more chats with senior members of our lodge. We will reminisce about colorful characters, the 1975 fire, past activities. You may learn where our lodge furniture came from, who made our altar, and hear about the infamous pink degree.